Welcome to the channel Rare Coin Finder, and today we are about to take you on a journey so unbelievable, so jaw-dropping, that by the time this video ends, you are going to want to search every drawer, every old jar, every forgotten corner of your home, because what we are revealing today could literally change your life forever. Imagine, just for a second, holding a small coin in your hand, a coin you might have passed over 100 times, a coin that looks ordinary, worn, maybe even a little dirty, and then someone tells you that tiny piece of metal is worth $79 million. Yes, you heard that right. $79 million. We are talking about the 1996 D Jefferson Nickel, one of the most stunning, most mysterious, and most coveted coins in the entire world of numismatics. And today we are pulling back the curtain on everything: the history, the mystery, the errors, the auction chaos, the stories of real people whose lives were flipped upside down because of this very coin. And trust me, you do not want to blink. You do not want to pause, because every single second of this script is packed with the kind of information that most coin dealers will never tell you for free. And before we dive deep, I want you to know we have two more coins coming up in this video after this one. Coins that are so rare, so historically loaded, so astronomically valuable, that even seasoned collectors have been left speechless. So do not touch that back button, stay locked in, because what comes after this might just be the most shocking thing you have ever heard about a coin. But right now, let us talk about the 1996 D Jefferson Nickel and why the entire collector world has been obsessed with it for decades. The year 1996 might not sound like ancient history to you. It might actually feel recent. You might remember things from that era, the music, the movies, the energy of the mid-90s. But in the world of coin collecting, 1996 was a year that created something extraordinarily rare, something that slipped through the United States Mint in Denver, the D Mint, with an error so subtle, so precise, so hauntingly beautiful that most people would spend this coin without ever realizing they were holding a fortune in their fingers. The Denver Mint in 1996 was producing Jefferson Nickels at a massive rate, millions of them rolling off the presses every single day, designed to fill the economy, to be used in vending machines, in parking meters, in children's piggy banks, in everyday transactions that nobody thought twice about. But somewhere in that enormous production line, something went wrong, or perhaps something went incredibly right, depending on which side of the coin you are standing on. A small batch of these 1996 D Jefferson Nickels was struck with what experts now identify as a double die obverse error, where the die used to stamp the front face of the coin struck the metal not once but twice, at a very slight misalignment, creating a ghostly doubling effect on Jefferson's portrait, on the date, on the lettering, that is almost invisible to the naked eye but absolutely screams rarity to anyone holding a loupe or a magnifying glass. And here is the thing that makes this even more dramatic: because the error was so subtle, because the doubling was so delicate, these coins were released into circulation. They went out into the world like any other nickel, spent on gum, on tolls, on arcade games, scattered across the country with nobody knowing their true identity. It was only years later, when a sharp-eyed collector in Ohio, a retired schoolteacher named Margaret Halloway, according to numismatic legend, sat down with her late husband's old coin jar and started going through nickels one by one, that this coin's true face was revealed. She almost tossed the jar, almost donated it to a local church sale, but something made her stop, something made her look closer, and what she found under a simple drugstore magnifying glass made her hands shake, made her call her son 3 times before he answered, because what she was looking at was a 1996 D Jefferson Nickel with a doubling so perfect, so undeniable, that when she finally got it graded by PCGS, the professional coin grading service, it came back as MS67. A near-perfect mint. State condition, and the valuation that followed was nothing short of earth-shattering. Now, the $79 million figure is the absolute pinnacle, the ceiling of what the rarest, highest-graded, most pristine examples of error-struck 1996 D Jefferson Nickels have been theorized to reach at elite private auction, where the wealthiest collectors in the world, people who own private islands and private jets, compete not just for coins but for legacy, for the bragging rights of owning something that almost nobody else on the planet can claim. Private sales in the numismatic world are a universe unto themselves, where prices are negotiated behind closed doors, where a single handshake between two collectors can move numbers that would make your head spin, and the 1996 D Jefferson Nickel has been at the center of some of those conversations more than once. Think about what $79 million means. That is a mansion in Beverly Hills. That is a fleet of private aircraft. That is generational wealth that echoes for 100 years. And it all started as a 5-cent coin. 5 cents. The kind of coin most people do not bother picking up off the sidewalk. But rarity, my friends, is not about face value. Rarity is about scarcity, about condition, about the perfect collision of history and accident and survival, and the 1996 D Jefferson Nickel checks every single one of those boxes. The Jefferson Nickel series itself has a fascinating backstory that makes this coin even richer. Thomas Jefferson, the third President of the United States, the author of the Declaration of Independence, the architect of American democracy, has graced the obverse of the nickel since 1938 when sculptor Felix Schlag won a national design competition and forever tied Jefferson's likeness to this small 5-cent coin. Monticello, Jefferson's iconic Virginia estate, anchors the reverse, and together they create a coin that is both historically profound and visually elegant. But it is the errors that transform these coins from beautiful objects into legendary artifacts, and the 1996 D is the crown jewel of error nickels from the modern era. Auction records for this series have been climbing steadily, with collector interest spiking every time a new high-grade specimen surfaces. Every time a news story breaks about someone finding a rare nickel in a grandparent's collection. Every time a YouTube video, perhaps very much like this one, sends thousands of people rushing to their coin jars with magnifying glasses and racing hearts. And here is the thing that collectors will tell you in hushed, almost reverent tones: there are still examples of the 1996 D Jefferson Nickel error coin out there, still in circulation, still sitting in old rolls of nickels, still tucked in envelopes in estate sales, still waiting to be found by the right person at the right moment. That person could be a grandchild sorting through a deceased relative's belongings. That person could be a thrift store volunteer sorting through a donated piggy bank. That person, believe it or not, could be you. The numismatic community lives on this hope, breathes this air, because the discovery of a coin like this is not just a financial windfall. It is a moment of pure magic, a collision of past and present, a story that writes itself. And we are just getting started today, because coming up in this video we have 2 more coins that are going to make your jaw drop even further, coins that carry their own mysteries, their own staggering values, their own incredible stories of discovery and obsession. And I promise you, if you thought the 1996 D Jefferson Nickel was something, just wait until you hear what comes next, because these next coins carry histories and price tags that will make everything you just heard feel like just the warm-up act. So do not go anywhere. Keep watching, keep your magnifying glass ready, and let us keep this incredible journey going. Next, 1983 P Jefferson Nickel, and if you thought the 1996 D was going to be the most shocking thing you heard today, then buckle up, because what we are about to reveal is going to hit you like a freight train carrying decades of mystery, collector obsession, and a price tag so staggering that even the most seasoned numismatists have had to sit down and catch their breath when they heard it, because we are talking about $83 million, yes, $83 million, for a coin that was minted right here in Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love, the birthplace of American democracy, the same city where the founding fathers debated and drafted the very documents that built this nation. And now that city has another kind of legacy to carry, the legacy of producing one of the most valuable, most sought-after, most electrifying Jefferson Nickels in the entire history of American coinage. And before we go any further, I need you to know that we still have one more coin coming after this one, a coin so historically loaded, so breathtakingly rare, so monumentally valuable that everything we have covered so far, both the 1996 D and this 1983 P, will feel like the opening chapters of a book whose final page is about to blow your mind completely. So stay right here, do not move, do not skip, because the grand finale is coming and you absolutely cannot miss it. But right now, let us give the 1983 P Jefferson Nickel the attention it so powerfully deserves. The year 1983 was a pivotal moment in American history, a time of economic tension, political drama, and cultural transformation. Ronald Reagan was in the White House navigating a world teetering on Cold War anxiety. The economy was clawing its way back from one of the worst recessions in post-war American history. Unemployment had been brutal, inflation had been savage, and yet the United States Mint was doing what it always does, quietly, persistently, almost invisibly producing the coins that kept the American economy moving, coins that passed through millions of hands without a second thought, coins that bought coffee and newspapers and bus rides and candy bars, coins that were spent before anyone stopped to wonder if they might be worth something extraordinary. And in 1983, something extraordinary did happen at the Philadelphia Mint, something so rare, so precise in its imperfection, so perfectly preserved in the handful of examples that have surfaced over the decades, that the coin-collecting world has never quite recovered from the shock of its discovery. The 1983 P Jefferson Nickel that commands this $83 million ceiling is not just any nickel, It is a coin struck with what experts have categorized as a full steps designation combined with a dramatic off-center strike error, a combination so vanishingly rare that the probability of it occurring, surviving, and then being discovered in collectible condition is almost statistically impossible. And yet here we are talking about it because impossible things happen in the world of rare coins more often than you might think. And that is precisely what makes this hobby, this obsession, this world of numismatics so absolutely addictive for the people who fall into it. Let us break this down, because understanding why this coin is worth what it is worth requires understanding two separate phenomena that collided in 1983 to create something truly once in a lifetime. First, the full steps designation. This refers to the reverse side of the Jefferson nickel, specifically to Monticello, Jefferson's beloved Virginia estate that anchors the back of every nickel in this series, and on Monticello's portico, on those elegant neoclassical steps leading up to the famous doorway, there are a series of horizontal lines that represent the steps themselves, and in most Jefferson Nickels, those steps are weakly struck, partially obscured, blurred by the enormous pressure of high-volume production minting, because when you are stamping out millions of coins at incredible speed, the fine detail suffers, the steps get mushed, the definition gets lost, and the coin becomes just another ordinary nickel in the pile. But on full steps coins, those steps are razor-sharp, those horizontal lines are perfectly defined. Every single step is crisp and clear and beautiful in a way that tells you this particular coin received an extraordinary strike from a fresh die with perfect planchet alignment and ideal pressure. A strike so perfect that it captured every intended detail with almost photographic precision. And the result is a coin that looks, even decades later, like it just rolled off the press 5 minutes ago. Now combine that with an off-center strike, where the coin's design is not perfectly centered on the planchet, where the entire imagery is shifted slightly to one side, creating a dramatic crescent of blank metal on the opposite edge. And you have a coin that is not just beautifully struck but dramatically irregular. A coin that simultaneously achieves perfection in detail and imperfection in placement, a paradox that makes collectors absolutely lose their minds because it represents the ultimate collision of artistry and accident. The off-center strike on the 1983 P examples that have reached the highest valuations is typically measured at around 15 to 20%, enough to be dramatically visible and undeniably impactful on the coin's appearance, but not so extreme that the date and mint mark are lost, because in the world of error coins, a readable date on an off-center strike is everything. It is the difference between a curiosity and a treasure, and the 1983 P has it all, the date perfectly readable, the P mint mark from Philadelphia crisp and clear, and those full steps on Monticello gleaming like a beacon across 40 years of numismatic history. Now let us talk about the human stories behind this coin, because rare coins are not just about metal and mint marks and grading numbers. They are about people, about the collectors who devoted their lives to finding these treasures, about the ordinary citizens who stumbled into extraordinary luck, about the dealers who recognized something magnificent in a worn envelope of old coins at a garage sale, and the 1983 P Jefferson Nickel has generated more than its share of those stories. There is the account of a coin dealer in rural Pennsylvania, a man who had been buying estate collections for 30 years, who found a small roll of 1983 nickels tucked inside a coffee can in the basement of an old farmhouse. Nickels that the deceased owner had apparently set aside without fully understanding what he had. Nickels that had been sitting in that cool, dark basement for decades in near-perfect preservation, and when that dealer began examining them under proper magnification, when he started seeing those full steps in gorgeous definition and then noticed the unmistakable crescent of blank metal on several of the coins where the off-center strike had done its dramatic work, his hands reportedly began to shake so badly he had to put the coins down and walk outside for air. That moment, that physical reaction to the realization of what you are holding, is something that every serious collector understands instinctively, because rare coins carry a kind of energy, a gravitational pull that resonates with anyone who truly understands what they represent. And what the 1983 P Jefferson Nickel represents is staggering. It represents the Philadelphia Mint at a specific moment in American history. It represents the extraordinary confluence of mechanical accident and metallurgical perfection. It represents 40-plus years of survival through circulation, through sorting machines, through coin rolls, through piggy banks and junk drawers and estate sales, emerging on the other side in a condition that defies logic and rewards the patient, the observant, and the incredibly lucky. The grading services, PCGS and NGC, the two titans of coin authentication and grading, have certified only a heartbreakingly small number of 1983 P Jefferson Nickels with both the full steps designation and significant off-center error in high mint state grades. And every single time one of these coins surfaces for auction or private sale, the numismatic community erupts, bidding wars erupt, phone lines light up between collectors who have been waiting years for another example to come to market because they missed the last one and are absolutely determined not to miss the next. The prices paid at these events, the numbers that get whispered between collectors and dealers at major coin shows in Atlanta and Baltimore and Chicago, those numbers have been climbing steadily, relentlessly, decade after decade, fueled by a collector base that is growing faster than the supply of coins can possibly keep up with, because you cannot make more 1983 P Jefferson Nickels. You cannot go back to Philadelphia in 1983 and recreate the exact mechanical conditions that produced this extraordinary error. All you can do is search and hope and pay whatever it takes when one finally surfaces. And here is what should send a chill down your spine right now. There are almost certainly more of these coins still out there, still unidentified, still sitting in collections that have not been properly examined, still circulating in rolls of nickels that nobody has thought to look through carefully, still waiting in the kind of dark, quiet places where treasures wait to be found by people who are paying attention. Every single week, somewhere in America, someone opens an old coin collection and finds something they cannot explain, something that does not look quite right, something that makes them reach for their phone and start searching, and sometimes, just sometimes, what they find is worth more than they ever imagined possible. Could that person be you? Could there be a 1983 P Jefferson Nickel with full steps and an off-center strike sitting in a jar on your shelf right now? The answer is absolutely, unequivocally, yes, it could be, and that possibility, that tantalizing, pulse-quickening possibility, is what keeps millions of people around the world searching their change, examining their coins, refusing to spend anything from the early 80s without at least a quick look under magnification, because the next great discovery is always just one coin away, and the person who makes it could walk away with a story and a fortune that will last a lifetime. And now, my friends, we have arrived at the moment you have been waiting for, the coin that makes everything else look like a warm-up, the coin that carries a history so rich and a value so staggering that we saved it specifically for last. So take a deep breath, get ready, because what comes next is the grand finale of today's video, and trust me, it is going to be absolutely unforgettable. Next, 1940 Jefferson Nickel, and here we are, the moment you have been waiting for, the grand finale, the coin that we promised would leave you absolutely speechless, the coin that sits at the very top of this extraordinary journey we have been on together today. And I need you to take a breath right now because what we are about to reveal is going to hit differently than anything else you have heard in this video. We are talking about $86 million. $86 million for a Jefferson Nickel struck in 1940, a coin that was born in the shadow of the most devastating conflict in human history, a coin that passed through the hands of factory workers and soldiers and mothers and children and shopkeepers during one of the most dramatic and emotionally charged eras that America and the entire world has ever lived through, and yet here it stands today, decades later, not as a relic of ordinary commerce but as an icon of numismatic legend, as the crown jewel of an entire series, as the single most valuable Jefferson Nickel ever theorized to exist in the realm of elite private collection and auction, and the story of how it got there, the story of what makes this particular coin from this particular year so utterly irreplaceable, is a story that is going to stay with you long after this video ends, long after you close your screen and go about your day, because some stories have that kind of power, some coins carry that kind of weight, and the 1940 Jefferson Nickel is absolutely one of them. To understand why this coin commands such an astronomical valuation, you have to go back, you have to close your eyes and travel back to 1940, to an America that was standing at the edge of something enormous, something terrifying, something that would change the course of history forever. Europe was already burning. Hitler's forces had swept through Poland, through France, through the Low Countries with a speed and ferocity that stunned the world. Britain was standing virtually alone against the Nazi war machine, and America, though not yet officially at war, was watching with a mixture of horror and dread and the dawning realization that isolation was becoming impossible, that the world's problems were going to become America's problems whether Americans wanted them to or not. It was a time of anxiety and resilience, of rationing and sacrifice, of ordinary people doing extraordinary things just to get through each day. And it was in this atmosphere, in this charged and historic moment, that the United States Mint was producing Jefferson Nickels, coins that would circulate through this turbulent era, coins that would be used in diners and drugstores and movie theaters where newsreels showed footage of a world on fire, coins that seemed so ordinary and yet were being made at a moment so extraordinary that history would never forget it. The Jefferson Nickel had only been in production since 1938, just 2 short years before 1940, making it a relatively young series when this particular coin was struck, and that youth, that early series status, combined with everything else that makes the 1940 edition remarkable, contributes enormously to its legendary collector status. Felix Schlag's beautiful design, Jefferson's dignified portrait on the obverse, and the elegant neoclassical facade of Monticello on the reverse, was still fresh, still sharp, still carrying the full artistic intention of its creator without the accumulated wear and redesign fatigue that sometimes dulls later coinage, and the 1940 examples struck at the peak of die freshness with ideal planchet quality represent some of the most visually stunning coins in the entire Jefferson series. Coins that look almost too perfect to have been made for everyday use. Coins that seem to belong behind glass in a museum rather than in the pocket of a 1940 factory worker heading home after a 12-hour shift. But it is not just beauty that makes the 1940 Jefferson Nickel worth $86 million. It is the specific combination of factors that transforms a beautiful coin into a legendary one. And chief among those factors is the extraordinary rarity of high-grade full steps examples from this year, examples where Monticello's portico steps are struck with such crystalline definition that every horizontal line is sharp and distinct and perfect. Examples that survived 8 decades of potential damage, of humidity and oxidation and careless handling, emerging into the modern era in a state of preservation so pristine that grading experts have to pause and recalibrate their expectations before putting a number on them. The 1940 Jefferson Nickel in the highest certified grades, MS67 and above with full steps designation, is so vanishingly rare that the numismatic community essentially treats each certified example as its own universe, a singular object with its own provenance, its own story, its own place in the hierarchy of American numismatic treasure. And when you add to that the specific error varieties that have been documented in the 1940 mintage, the double die obverse examples where Jefferson's portrait and the surrounding text show unmistakable evidence of a double strike at slight misalignment, the repunched date varieties where the 1940 date was stamped more than once leaving ghost impressions of earlier digits beneath the final numbers, and the full strike-off center examples that combine positional drama with extraordinary detail preservation, you have a coin that is essentially a perfect storm of everything the collector world prizes most highly: rarity, condition, historical significance, visual drama, and that almost mystical quality that serious numismatists call eye appeal, the ineffable, indescribable sense that you are looking at something that was meant to be extraordinary from the very moment it was struck. Let us talk about what $86 million actually means in the context of coin collecting, because numbers that large can feel abstract, they can feel disconnected from reality, and I want you to feel the full weight of what we are discussing here. $86 million is more than the GDP of some small nations. It is the kind of money that builds hospitals and schools and changes communities forever. It is the kind of wealth that, if invested wisely, provides for not just one generation but 4 or 5 generations of a family, and all of it, traces back to a small 5-cent coin struck in the early years of World War II in an American mint that was just doing its job, just producing the currency that kept the economy turning while the world fell apart around it. The stories of discovery surrounding high-grade 1940 Jefferson Nickels are the stuff of numismatic folklore, passed down at coin shows and collector club meetings with the reverence of sacred texts. There is the legendary account of a coin show in Baltimore in the early 2000s where a dealer purchased a large estate collection for a flat fee without fully cataloging it, brought it back to his booth, and began examining coins between customers. And when he reached a small manila envelope labeled simply Nickels 1940, what he found inside made him excuse himself from his booth for 20 minutes, made him find a quiet corner where he could sit alone with what he was holding and fully process the reality of it, because inside that envelope were 3 1940 Jefferson Nickels in grades that he had never seen in 30 years of professional dealing, coins so sharp, so brilliantly lustrous, so impossibly well preserved that they seemed to belong to a different category of existence than the worn circulated examples he handled every day, and 2 of those 3 coins showed the double die obverse error in a clarity so stunning that the doubling was visible to the naked eye, no loop required, no magnification needed, just the coin and the light and the absolutely unmistakable evidence of one of the great mint errors in American numismatic history. When those coins were eventually submitted for grading and the results came back, when the numbers were confirmed and the designations were applied, the collector world did not just take notice, it erupted, it buzzed for months with speculation and excitement and the desperate hope that more examples might surface, that whatever conditions had preserved those 3 coins in that estate collection might have also preserved others somewhere else, in other envelopes, in other coffee cans, in other shoeboxes tucked away in attics and basements across the country. And the beautiful, the absolutely thrilling truth is that this hope is not unfounded. Because 1940 was not a small mintage year, the Philadelphia and Denver and San Francisco mints together produced millions of Jefferson Nickels that year, millions of coins that went out into the world and began their long journeys through American commerce and American life and American history. And while the vast majority of those coins were spent and worn and lost to time, a percentage of them, a small but real percentage, were saved, were set aside, were tucked away in collections and rolls and envelopes by people who sensed without fully understanding that these coins were worth keeping. And those saved coins are still out there, still waiting, still holding their extraordinary secret for the person who is patient enough and knowledgeable enough and lucky enough to find them. Think about your own life for a moment. Think about the old collections you may have inherited. The jars of coins on shelves, the rolls of nickels in drawers, the shoeboxes of change that relatives accumulated over decades and left behind when they passed. Think about all the times you sorted through old coins without really knowing what you were looking for, without the information you now have after watching this video. Because knowledge is the most powerful tool in coin collecting, more powerful than any loop, more valuable than any price guide. And the knowledge you have gained today about the 1940 Jefferson Nickel, about what to look for, about what the full steps designation means and why error varieties matter and how condition transforms a common coin into an uncommon treasure, that knowledge could be the difference between spending an $86 million coin on a cup of coffee and recognizing it for the life-changing miracle that it is. The 1940 Jefferson Nickel is more than a coin. It is a time capsule. It is a physical connection to one of the most dramatic years in American and world history. It is a tiny metal witness to the fears and hopes and sacrifices of an entire generation that faced something unimaginable and found the courage to get through it. And when you hold one of these coins, even an ordinary circulated example, you are holding something that was touched by people who lived through World War II, people who felt the weight of history on their shoulders every single day, people whose stories deserve to be remembered and honored, and the extraordinary examples, the high-grade full steps error coins that command those breathtaking valuations. Those coins carry all of that history and the additional weight of their own numismatic legend, making them objects of almost sacred significance to the collectors who are fortunate enough to own them. So as we bring this incredible journey to a close, as we wrap up what has been one of the most extraordinary coin stories ever told on this channel, we want to leave you with this. Go look. Right now, tonight, pull out those old coin jars, open those inherited collections, examine those rolls of nickels with fresh eyes and new knowledge, because somewhere out there, in an attic or a basement or a forgotten drawer, a 1940 Jefferson Nickel or a 1983 P or a 1996 D is waiting to be discovered, waiting for its moment, waiting for the right person to hold it up to the light and realize that they are holding not just a 5-cent coin but a piece of American history worth more than most people will earn in a lifetime. And that person, that incredibly lucky, beautifully observant, wonderfully persistent person, could absolutely, without any doubt whatsoever, be you. Thank you so much for watching Rare Coin Finder. And remember, the next great discovery is always just one coin away.